So today, I am going to do a deep dive on Hezbollah. What and who is Hezbollah? What is Hezbollah? Who are their leaders? The reason why is because Hezbollah is often talked about in the news, but I don't think there's been any news program discussing Hezbollah specifically, the organization, their aims, their goals, their objectives, and how they factor into the current war in Israel and Hamas. And I thought this would be a really interesting way to kind of learn together because I've read some books on the Middle East, but nothing on Hezbollah. So it's a very big blind spot for me. So I figured, why don't we learn together? So I start where everybody on the internet starts these days, which is with Wikipedia. So let me get Wikipedia's Hezbollah up and, we'll walk through precisely what it is. So Hezbollah is a Party of Allah or Party of God. It's a Lebanese Shia Islamist political party and militant group. Its Secretary General, it's led since 1992 by its Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah. It's a paramilitary wing in the they have a paramilitary wing in which is the Jihad Council, and its political wing is the Loyalty to the Resistance Bloc in the Lebanese parliament. So they've got the paramilitary wing, and then they've got the political wing. It was established in the wake of the 1982 Lebanon War. So let's stop there. What was the 1982 Lebanon War? Well, 1982 Israeli invasion of Lebanon, known in Israel as the 1982 Lebanon War. Interesting. The 1982 Israeli invasion of Lebanon, known in Israel as the 1982 Lebanon War, and dubbed Operation Peace for Galilee, by the Israeli government, later known as the First Lebanon War, also and known simply as the invasion in Lebanon. Okay, lots of different terminologies here. The invasion followed a series of attacks and counterattacks between the Palestinian Liberation Organization, operating in southern Lebanon, and the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, that had caused civilian casualties on both sides of the border. It was launched after gunmen from Abu Nidal's organization, ANO, attempted to assassinate Shlomo Argov, Israel's ambassador to the United Kingdom. Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin, I should know the names of these, blamed Abu Nidal's enemy, the PLO, for the incident and used the incident to cause casus belli for the invasion. Casus belli is an act or an event that either provokes or is used to justify a war. Okay, so Hezbollah is born out of the Lebanon War. Now, let's just fast forward here because it is very complicated and there's a lot of things here, but we see that 654 Israelis were killed with 3,887 wounded. This is over a three-year period. The PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organizations, 1,000 to 2,400 killed with 6,000 captured. So many more dead on the Palestinian Liberation Organization side. Okay, so in September 82, the PLO withdrew most of its forces from Lebanon with U.S. assistance. Israel and Lebanon reached an accord in May 1983 that set the stage to withdraw Israeli forces from Lebanon with them to patrol a security zone together with the Lebanese army. So you can see the balance of power here on the right. The instruments of ratification were never exchanged, and in March 84, under pressure from Syria, Lebanon canceled the agreement. Interesting. In 1985, Israel started to withdraw most of its troops, leaving a small residual Israeli force and an Israeli-supported militia, the South Lebanon Army in southern Lebanon, in a security zone, which Israel considered a necessary buffer against attacks on its northern territory. Okay, so the Israeli withdrawal to the security zone ended in June 1985. Israel withdrew fully from Lebanon in 2000. Interesting. So this withdrawal led to the de facto Syrian occupation of Lebanon. Syria would gain much more power over Lebanon than what it enjoyed before 1982. One of the lingering consequences of the Israeli invasion of Lebanon was the creation of Hezbollah. Here we go. In 2000, when Ehud Barak was Israeli prime minister, Israel finally withdrew from the security zone to behind the blue line. Lebanon and Hezbollah continued to claim a small area called Sheba Farms as Lebanese territory, but Israel insists that it is captured Syrian territory with the same status as the Golan Heights. The United Nations has not determined the final status of Sheba Farms, but has determined that Israel has complied with UNSC Resolution 425. the UN Secretary General concluded that as of June 16, 2000, Israel has withdrawn its forces from Lebanon in accordance with the UN security resolution. So there's some debate over the Shebaa farms. Israel's withdrawal from Lebanon led to pressure on Syrians to withdraw their occupation forces as well. And this pressure intensified after the assassination of popular Lebanese Prime Minister Rafik Hariri. Okay, so Syrian occupation forces withdrew from Lebanon. So really what also happened out of the Lebanon War was the creation of Hezbollah. So now if we go back to Hezbollah, we know that they were created as a result of the Lebanon War, who had studied, it adopted a model set up by Ayatollah Khomeini after the Iranian Revolution, that the party's founders adopted Hezbollah as the name chosen by Khomeini. Now, Hezbollah actually means Party of Allah. The organization was created, this thing, when your cursor scrolls over these links, it just opens up this whole window, so my apologies. The organization was created with the support of 1,500 Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps instructors and aggregated a variety of Lebanese Shia groups into a unified organization that resisted the Israeli occupation of southern Lebanon. Okay, so for those that aren't aware of the geography of all of this, I will just bring up a map. Israel map. This is a map. Thank you, Google Maps. So I think the area that they're referring to, and again, I am not an expert, so here we go, so this is Israel to the south, and this is southern Lebanon right here. So that's Beirut. And there was an area, let's see if we can find Shebaa Farms, that Hezbollah says, okay, this is Shebaa Farms. Wow, there's actually nothing. But I'm assuming it's in this generic area of Lebanon. So southern Lebanon, northern Israel, we can say that that is potentially some area in here is somewhat disputed. This is all starting to make sense now. Okay, so now that we understand the origins of it, I want to now understand why. Like it's kind of philosophy, it's underlying philosophy of Hezbollah. And the reason you might be asking why I want to know its underlying philosophy is because, as I said in the Ben Shapiro video that I did, I don't believe that any organization of any size can actually gain any traction without appealing to people on some level when it comes to their understanding of the world. It has to appeal. If it doesn't appeal, people simply will reject it outright, and it'll stay some type of fringe movement with no real influence. The fact that it actually does have influence and people somehow agree to it, to me, means that we should pause and really try to understand it. Okay, so we kind of understand that the underpinnings of it. Okay, so I want to understand like Islamic Jihad organization. Okay, here we go. Ideology of Hezbollah. I love this. It's been summarized as Shiite radicalism. Hezbollah was largely formed with the aid of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini's followers in the early 80s in order to spread the Islamic Revolution, and follows a distinct version of Islamic Shia ideology developed by Khomeini, leader of the Islamic Revolution. So it declared its existence on February 16, 1985 in the Hezbollah program. The document was read by their spokesman in West Beirut and simultaneously published an al-Safir, or I'm assuming in an open letter, oh, there it is, an open letter to all the oppressed in Lebanon and the world. And a separate pamphlet was first published. Okay, let's get to that pamphlet. See appendix. Come on. Let's see if we can find this. You know what? My Google search history is going to be really interesting. But I'm doing this out of curiosity, and I'm really hoping that you all are taking something from this, because I think this is really important for our discourse. I clearly need to access that. Oh, is it actually a book? Okay, so it's a book. I wish I could find that open letter, but we'll keep going. According to the program, the principles of the ideology are to expel Americans, the French, and their allies definitely from Lebanon, and put an end to any colonialist entity entering on our land, to submit to the Phalanges to a just power. The Phalanges is that Phalanges power. Yeah, there we go. The Phalanges is a Christian political party in Lebanon. The party played a major role in the Lebanese Civil War. Okay, so it's going to submit to that Christian party to a just power and to bring them all to justice for the crimes they have perpetrated against Muslims and Christians. To permit all the sons of our people, interesting sons of our people, to determine their future and to choose in all the liberty, the form of government they desire. We call upon all of them to pick the option of Islamic government, which alone is capable of guaranteeing justice and liberty for all. Only an Islamic regime can stop any future tentative attempts of imperialistic infiltration onto our country. Okay, so very much the basically to expel basically anyone, American, French, and any of their allies from Lebanon. So like this ethnic purity or cultural purity, to bring the Christian party to justice, and to only allow an Islamic government, which is only capable of guaranteeing justice and liberty for all. Only an Islamic regime can stop any future tentative attempts of imperialistic infiltration onto our country. So very much like nationalist, very much ethnocentric, very much aligned with, they know what's best and no one else can really come in their way. Khomeini is the leader who orders we obey, calls on Christians to open your hearts and to our call and embrace Islam, and noted that Allah has made it intolerable for Muslims to participate in a regime which is not predicated upon the Sharia. Explained that Israel is the vanguard of the United States in our Islamic world. So this is really important to understanding this conflict. It's that Hezbollah believes that not only is it important that there are no colonialists in Lebanon, but it's also that Muslims cannot participate in a regime which is not predicated upon Sharia. This is really interesting, right? So it's like, we don't even recognize you as a government because you don't have any authority over us, because you can't say that you have authority because you're not in alignment with Islam and only Islam. The current leader, Hassan Nasrallah, has described Hezbollah's ideology as having two main axes. First, a belief in the rule by the just jurisconsult and adherence to Khomeini's leadership. And second, to the continued need to struggle against the Israeli enemy. Interesting. In the late 80s, Nasrallah said, "Our plan, to which we as faithful believers have no alternative, is to establish an Islamic state under the rule of Islam. Lebanon should not be an Islamic republic on its own, but rather part of the greater Islamic Republic governed by the Master of Time and his right deputy." Okay. So it's not the fact that it's only Lebanon for Hezbollah. It's that there's a greater Islamic Republic governed by the Master of Time. Very interesting. Does that mean, did they set boundaries on what that greater Islamic Republic looks like? This is very similar to what I did. I read some books on ISIS, and ISIS routinely talked about Khorasan, another state, again, an Islamic Republic. Hezbollah underwent what a number of observers have called a process of Lebanonization, which is reflected in the acceptance of multi-confessional Lebanon, rapprochement with a variety of non-Islamist forces, participation in electoral politics, and an emphasis on providing for social welfare. Okay, so Hezbollah, I don't understand why it's written in that way, but published a new manifesto in December 2009, which shifts its direction to better stay coherent with current situations. The new manifesto contains language that downplays the Islamic rhetoric, interesting, and focuses more on integration into their community. Furthermore, the new manifesto calls for the elimination of the sectarian system in place right now in Lebanon and calls for a replacement of this system by a secular modern system. Interesting. So it looks like they're modernizing. However, the new manifesto states that the U.S. and Israel are still Hezbollah's prime. Again, it's written differently here. It still states that the U.S. and Israel are its prime enemies. Moreover, it eliminates the possibility of open discussion on its right to bear arms. It pursues this agenda with the assistance of various like-minded allies in the region. Okay, we're getting to understand a little bit more about the roots of it. Okay, so there's all types of, so Islamism is, this is the original 1985 manifesto. Okay, our culture is based on the Holy Quran, and okay. So Khomeini's followers in the early 80s spread the Islamic Revolution and followed a distinct version of Islamic Shia ideology, Wilayat al-Faqih. Okay, so let's see. This is the Islamic ideology that was being spread at the time, the guardianship of the Islamic jurist. It's a concept in 12er Shia Islamic law, which holds that until the reappearance of the infallible Imam, sometime before Judgment Day, at least some of the religious and social affairs of the Muslim world should be administered by righteous Shiite jurists. Shia disagrees over whose religious and social affairs are to be administered and what those affairs are. Shia disagrees over whose religious. Wilayat al-Faqih is associated in particular with Ruhollah Khomeini and the Islamic Republic of Iran. In a series of lectures in 1970, Khomeini advanced the idea of guardianship in its absolute form as rule of the state and society. This version of guardianship now forms the basis of the Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which calls for a guardian jurist to serve as the supreme leader of that country. Okay, this is interesting. It's now being understood that when it comes to some of the religious and social affairs of the Muslim world, it should be administered by righteous Shiite jurists. Okay. Under absolute authority of the jurist has control over all public matters, including governance of states, all religious affairs, including even being able to suspend religious obligations. Obedience to him is more important than performing those religious obligations. Wow. So it's very much like a very strong basic saying that guardianship of the Islamic jurist is essential to Islamic government, given no further qualification. With those supporting limited non-governmental guardianship of faqih being described as rejecting it. This commonly... Okay, very interesting. So what we're gathering from this is there's an open rejection of any type of rule from anyone outside who's a non-Muslim over Muslims. So very much aligning with the Islamic Revolution in Iran and others, and other revolutions. I think that was the only Islamic revolution. It views its conflict with Israel and the Jewish people as religiously motivated. I'm just going to pause there and just see if anybody is saying anything in the chat. Nothing here, which is okay. Okay, so we're starting to understand a little bit about Hezbollah. Wow. Okay, this is really interesting. Hezbollah as a religious God, according to the Hezbollah theology, cursed all Jews as blasphemers, damned for all time and throughout history. Hezbollah believes that the destruction of Israel will bring about the reappearance of the Imam, the Shiite Islamic Messiah. These issues exist independently of Israeli treatment of Palestinians or even the existence of the State of Israel, although Hezbollah has strong objections to these more earthly matters as well. Hezbollah leader Syed Hassan Nasrallah has said that in an interview that Israel is an illegitimate entity and it is a threat to the region. It is a constant threat to the whole region. We cannot coexist with this threat. That is why the ultimate goal of the Arab Islamic nation is to end Israel's existence, irrespective of the problems, sensitivities, and everything that has happened and could happen between Palestinians and non-Palestinians, Shia and Sunni, Muslims and Christians. Very, very, very interesting. So, I mean, it's definitely aligning with what perhaps many thought. Okay, so here's where it gets interesting. If you really want to know Hezbollah's views on Israel, from its inception, the elimination of the state of Israel has been a primary goal of Hezbollah. Hezbollah not only opposes the government and policies of the state of Israel, but also each and every Jewish civilian who lives in Israel. Its 1985 manifesto reportedly states our struggle will end only when this entity is obliterated. We recognize no treaty with it, no ceasefire, and no peace agreements. Secretary General Nasrallah has stated, Israel is illegal. It's an illegal usurper entity, which is based on falsehoods, massacres, and illusions, and considers that the elimination of Israel will bring peace in the Middle East. There is no solution to this conflict in the region except with the disappearance of Israel. In an interview with the Washington Post, Nasrallah says again, I am against any reconciliation with Israel. I do not even recognize the presence of a state that is called Israel. I consider its presence both unjust and unlawful. That is why if Lebanon concludes a peace agreement and brings that accord to the parliament, our deputies will reject it. Hezbollah refuses any conciliation with Israel. When a peace agreement is concluded, we would surely disagree with the Lebanese government about that, but we would not make any turmoil out of it. During the Oslo peace process in 1993, Nasrallah and several other top Hezbollah generals came out staunchly opposed to any final peace agreement between the Israelis and Palestinians, to the point that they accused Palestinian National Authority President Yasser Arafat of blasphemy and treachery to the Muslim people. Okay, so this is very interesting for people who are nerds like me about this whole topic. It's that any Palestinian or any Muslim group that either recognizes Israel or attempts to go down peace processes with Israel, they consider that as treachery and blasphemy to the Muslim people. And that's a really, really important distinction. There's no middle ground for Hezbollah. It's all or nothing. They don't recognize Israel as a country, and they don't recognize Israel as a state. In fact, they say that Israel, they're not going to even engage. Nasrallah went on to say, I tell you this, Israel in quotations, that owns nuclear weapons and the strongest air force in the region is more fragile than a spider web. Very interesting. Hezbollah said publicly that it is ready to open a second front against Israel in support of the Intifada. Okay, so according to Hezbollah, they said publicly it is ready to open a second front. Okay, they also said that he would not sabotage. Nasrallah said he would not sabotage what is finally a Palestinian matter, which is a two-state solution, but as such a settlement is reached, he will, he said, continue to encourage Palestinian suicide bombers. What the heck? It's very tricky to understand what Hezbollah sees as a potential solution, because they have obviously a militant view of the situation. Okay, now how much support? Here's a question. How much support does Hezbollah have? Who supports Hezbollah maintains broad-based support in all three areas of Lebanon, with a majority Shia Muslim population in the south in Beirut and its surrounding area, and in northern Bekaa Valley and Hermil region. It's a well-equipped military force of substantial size, but it also has significant sway over Lebanon. Very interesting. Its influence is underpinned by its sophisticated arsenal and support of many Lebanese Shias who see the group as defends Lebanon from Israel. Okay, so maybe people may not agree with all of Hezbollah's tactics, but they still see that Hezbollah is a way in which to defend Lebanon from Israel because of the Lebanon War. Okay, so I hope this gives you just a very good overview of Lebanon. It goes into a lot of detail here. Wow, interesting. Hezbollah recognizes and promotes women's rights somewhat more strongly than other groups, as per Hezbollah's self-proclaimed model and example. From its founding, Hezbollah women have headed education, medical, and social service organizations. Most recently, Hezbollah nominated several women to run in the Lebanese elections. It named Wafa Hotet as the chief of Al Noor Radio and promoted 37-year-old Rima Fakhri to its highest ruling body, the Hezbollah Political Council. Okay, so I hope this has given you just a really brief overview of Hezbollah and what it is. It's a political entity that has increasing power and influence in Lebanon. And what I'm also interested in, and I wish I could get into that more here, but a deeper dive into why um, Hezbollah is so influential in Israel, in Lebanon. Um, and I, again, my gut tells me, without knowing again the history, it's that the wounds from the 1982 Lebanon War are so they're still very open, and people remember how perhaps Hezbollah was part of a larger group that was looking to defend Lebanon. And so maybe even some moderates in Lebanon are like, I kind of see where Hezbollah is coming from. They definitely may not agree with everything in Hezbollah, but they see them as a defending force against the threat of Israel coming in and invading like they did in 1982, according to the brief Wikipedia entries that I just shared with you. So I hope you enjoyed this. Again, it's just a brief overview of Hezbollah. I thought this would be an interesting kind of video just to walk through what it is. And this is what's missing in our discourse, just a real kind of neutral understanding of the political entity and what they're all about. So hopefully this demystified some things for you when it comes to Hezbollah. And I hope you enjoyed it. So I'll definitely catch you in the next one. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll also post this up on YouTube. Thanks, everyone.